to you about these mobile telephones. These mobile telephones that people seem to be so fond of using nowadays. Is the mobile phones making us become less sociable, letting us become less emotional? Is this device becoming too dependent on? Are we becoming too dependent on these devices? Is these devices making us antisocial? You see, years and years ago, before the smartphone, when we just had computers and phones, if you wanted to contact someone via email, you had to wait until you get home from work before you could get onto your emails. But now you've got this combination of a phone and a computer to combine the two together. So now you've got something called a smartphone, which is basically a mini computer. Are we becoming too dependent on these devices? We leave just about everything on these phones now. Not me personally, but there's a lot of people who use these mobile phones and they'll use them to pay their bills. They'll use them to put their photographs on, their holiday photographs or their family photographs. When they're out in some social engagement, they'll have these phones taking pictures. They'll also send emails maybe to their friends or maybe to a client or maybe to a work colleague. So now, what was once private is now starting to become, what was once private is now starting to become almost public. And the people who own these social media companies, do you realize that they are watching everything that you are doing? Every transaction that you make, everywhere that you go, everything that you're shopping for using your QR code on your phone. I see some people and they're sat in pubs and they're sat in restaurants and bars and nobody's talking to each other. They're just looking at their phones. It's like the phone has almost become an addiction. Karl Marx, the German philosopher, said many years ago that religion is the opium of the people. But it seems like the new opium of the people is our mobile phones. I just said it. It looks like the new opium of the people is our mobile phone. When Karl Marx was talking about religion being the opium of the people, he was talking about how religion is like an addiction. But now our mobile phones are like an addiction. We can't put them down. Some people got them on them 24/7, 24/7, 7 days a week. And on average, as I say, in the UK, it's 6 hours. And in America, it's 7 hours. That's only averages that people are on these devices, on these phones. Is these phones starting to suck out our emotions? Are we becoming like androids? Are we becoming like robots? Becoming slowly more synthetic? We're on these devices looking for entertainment. There was once a Roman poet, and his name was Juvenal, and he said, "Give the people bread and circuses. Give the people bread and circuses. If you give the people bread and circuses, they'll be more interested in this than what's going on in terms of the political arena, in terms of what the government is doing. Give the people bread and circuses." There's another famous philosopher by the name of Socrates, and he said that an unexamined life is not worth living. An unexamined life is not worth living. We should be using our own critical thinking. We should be looking within. We should be trying to discover and find ourselves. But now, The lack of critical thinking seems to be the thing nowadays. People aren't thinking for themselves, but they're allowing their phones, their devices to take over this role of thinking for them rather than thinking for themselves. Now, what world we are going into? Are we becoming more emotionless? If you go to a restaurant or you go to a bar, you see people sat around and they're all on their phones and nobody's having a conversation with each other. They're just tapping on the keypad. There's no eye contact. There's no one talking to each other. What is the point then of going out if it's not to socially engage with each other? Why are people more interested in what's going on their device than having a conversation with each other? You see, this world that we're living in is becoming more and more of a contactless world. In the future, your employers, for those of you who are employed, your employers may start to use avatars in order to get rid of you. That's right, use avatars in order to get rid of you. This is a virtual world. Rather than physically going and speaking to your boss, you'll have an avatar and an avatar of yourself. And there'll be a virtual reality office. Now your boss calls you into this virtual reality office and turns around and says to you, you've been taking too much time off. You've taken 7 days off in the last 6 months. And that is not an acceptable level. So you have got to go. Did you hear me? You have got to go. This is an avatar telling you, not your boss and you face to face physically. This is done through an avatar. You are fired. You have been deleted. You've taken too much time off work. You've taken 7 days in the last 6 months. And this is not an acceptable level. You see, robots, you don't have to pay them. Robots, they work much faster. They don't get sick. And they're more efficient. And they can run 24/7. So eventually these devices, these robots and avatars will start to take over people's jobs. And you're already starting to see it in the market. People aren't listening, are they? James Brown, hit me 1 time. You're still not listening, are you? Hit me 2 times. You still ain't listening, are you? I said, hit me 3 times. Hit me upside the head. You still aren't listening. This information still isn't getting through to you, is it? Because there's many of you out there, you're still emotionless. You're still starting to depend on these devices rather than actually having a physical conversation with each other. We are slowly becoming like androids. Sometimes I see people going to cross the road and they're not looking up, they're not looking around behind them to see any oncoming traffic or to see if there's anyone behind them, and they just step right out into the road. And then they think afterwards. They act first and then think afterwards. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't you be thinking first and then acting afterwards? We are slowly becoming a dystopic world, a dystopic society. Imagine your boss calling you into an office, an avatar calling you into a virtual reality office, and then telling you you've taken too much time off of work or your productivity isn't enough, or we can replace you with this avatar or AI. It might not happen this way. It could be that you get a letter sent to you at home, but this letter hasn't been written by your boss. This letter has been written to you by an avatar, right? Telling you that you're no longer needed. Telling you you are no longer needed. What a cold way of getting rid of someone. No face-to-face meeting. In the future, you hardly have any human beings that you can speak to when you have a problem. If you have a problem with your bank, if you have a problem with your council housing, if you have a problem with, say, it might be holiday flights, you will not be speaking to a human being, you'll be speaking to a robot, an avatar, or AI. It looks like we're going into this dystopic world, a world discussed by George Orwell. This dystopic world. Is this the world that you want for you and for your children? I said, is this the world that you want for you and your children? I could hit you upside the head about 10 times and you're still not listening. Hit me 1 time. Hit me 2 times. I said, hit me 3 times. Ow! You're still not listening. Get on the good foot. Most of you's on the bad foot right now. You need to get on that good foot. As James Brown would say, get on the good foot. We need to seriously start thinking. Use reasoning, sound right reasoning, critical thinking. Instead of going into this dystopic world, this contactless society. People are becoming so inculcated. People are becoming so, what's the word for it? Acquiescent to the system. And they're not thinking critically, not thinking for themselves. And they're becoming emotionless. You tell people you've lost your job, and they'll be just, oh well, there's nothing I can do about it. Oh well. No emotion, just accepting of everything. Realize that you are a sovereign being on this planet. A sovereign being. You have inalienable rights. I welcome AI. I welcome technology, but not to the extent that it takes over our jobs. We spend too much time on these devices. Somebody's going to say to me, Eldad, look at that phone you got there. That looks really old. All right? Look at that phone. That looks really old, man. You need to update your phone. Listen, I live within my means. I live within my means. This phone is suffice enough for what I need it for. Okay? It suffice for me. I live within my means. I don't need to have a £2,000 phone giving over all of my private information to these big tech companies. I don't need to have a car worth £20,000 and then get myself in debt trying to pay it off. I try and live within my means. I've been telling other people for the longest of time, that's what you need to do. Start trying to live within your means. Otherwise your debt starts to become like a prison. Your debts will become like a prison. Live within your means. Anyway, I leave you this thought. What if in the next 5 to 10 years, avatars, bots, AI start to take over your jobs? What are you going to do? Are we becoming emotionless? Are we becoming a contactless society? Are we losing our ability to be social creatures? Are we losing our social skills? This is Eldad Amara with another video, over and out. Thank you.